It's time we test two opponents in the premium soundbar tiers. Today, it's the Japanese edition of soundbar duels with a Nakamichi Shockwafe wireless versus a Sony BRAVIA theater quad with bass module. Hi, I'm Vanessa from RTINGS.com. We've tested over 220 soundbars, and two Japanese manufacturers pop up consistently: Sony and Nakamichi. While Sony needs no introduction, with a massive presence across all kinds of consumer and professional electronics, Nakamichi flies a little more below the radar. Here's the elephant in the room. The Nakamichi is big. Too big to fit in front of most TVs without blocking the bottom of the screen. In most cases, you'll want to mount the bar on the wall because its formidable size limits your options with TV stands. The set is very well built with a matte finish, and the satellites are similarly angular in design. Meanwhile, the outboard subwoofers are each about the size of a party speaker. As an 11.26 setup, the Nakamichi is much bigger than the top-tier Sony Theater Quad, which is a 4.14 configuration. The Sony comprises two front speakers, two rear speakers, a subwoofer, and a control box, which is a different approach than the Nakamichi. Your TV stand needs an extra foot on either side of the TV, or you'll have to mount the speakers on their own stands or the wall. Cleverly, the tabletop stands the speakers use can flip to become mounting brackets. Overall, the Sony takes up much less space than the Nakamichi, but it's not small in performance or technology. For many people, this is the first point of determination. Can your living space fit and make the most of the Nakamichi? Or are you going to have to use the subwoofers as side tables to fit it into your home? The Nakamichi supplies more wired ports, which gets to the heart of what the soundbar is for. You have an eARC port and two full HDMI 2.1 in ports. The Sony has one eARC and a single 2.1 HDMI in port. So both are certainly capable of acting as hubs for things like gaming consoles. But the Nakamichi's extra HDMI in means that you can hook up an extra outboard device with video pass-through. Older devices can use the one optical port on the Nakamichi, but the Sony lacks that versatility. The Nakamichi also includes an analog 3.5mm aux in port, so the Nakamichi wins this round. That said, both home theater kits offer complete audio format support via eARC, Dolby Digital Plus, Dolby Atmos, DTS-X, and more. Their video pass-through via HDMI in is nearly identical as well, covering the common formats at 4K up to 120Hz and gaming-friendly FreeSync and G-Sync. The only point of difference is that the Nakamichi supports HDR10+ pass-through, while the Sony only supports HDR10 pass-through. Latency via HDMI in and eARC varies depending on the audio format, but overall, it's tighter on the Nakamichi. You can adjust the AV sync in either soundbar's companion app though. While the Nakamichi prevails when it comes to wired connections, it only supports Bluetooth and Apple AirPlay for wireless audio. If you want to connect over Wi-Fi or streamline the experience with Spotify Connect, the Sony is more versatile and can connect to Bluetooth and AirPlay as well. While you can use the apps for most features, the Nakamichi's remote is noticeably more in-depth, with numerous dedicated per-function buttons, giving you control over nearly all the soundbar settings. Sony's remote sticks to a theme of simplicity. It's sparse compared to the others, but still perfectly functional. Similarly, Sony's control box boasts a power button and a pairing button for the speakers, with a small screen to show the settings. All that simplicity urges you to rely on the companion app for most functions. The Nakamichi offers a larger scrolling dot matrix display, power, volume inputs, and oddly, a demo mode, presumably to show off when you have friends who ask why you have two large subwoofers. Let's run through how these sound. For our initial stereo frequency response testing, we set the Nakamichi to the Music 1 preset in the all-channel stereo mode. As with our other stereo test, the crossover was set to 130Hz and the low frequency effect to -1 decibel. Without further calibration, the Nakamichi is warmer overall, with a slightly more veiled top end that rolls off treble around 15 kHz. The Sony keeps up well though. With the room correction and standard surround preset, its high bass and low mids are a bit more forward in the mix, as is the sparkle on the top end, thanks to the greater high frequency extension. Despite the differences in their size, the Sony sub produces a punchy bass, but that's not quite as thumpy as the Nakamichi. As far as user setup goes, the Sony includes an automatic room correction tool called Sound Field Optimization, which mainly tunes the subwoofer to the room. We use the Nakamichi's manual custom room calibration. This involves measuring your room and going through the Nakamichi's advanced settings to find the optimal setup for your space. Once we went through the initial setup with both soundbars, they didn't require additional calibration to sound better in our testing room. Unlike most conventional soundbars, the Sony stereo soundstage has variables that will alter with your specific setup. Essentially, with speakers that you can place as close or as far apart as you desire, the Sony can create a remarkably wide stereo soundstage with good focus. This is one of the more appealing features of this setup compared to the conventional bar. On the flip side, if you place the speakers too far apart, it can create holes in the soundstage towards the center. Without a dedicated center channel speaker, the Sony creates a phantom center with the two front-facing speakers, and it can sound a bit bright and lacking in weight in the lows. Voices cut through the mix, but it's not as defined within the soundstage. The Nakamichi's more conventional bar provides a good stereo soundstage that isn't as wide as the Sony's, but it offers good focus without noticeable holes in the image. We found that the all-channel stereo mode sounds better than the regular stereo mode, but at the compromise of playing audio through all the speakers, including the satellites. One upside of the Nakamichi's bar design is the discrete center channel drivers. We find that the Movie 1 preset in native mode offers the best balance of clarity and detail with speech, delivering a much more balanced center than the Sony's Phantom Center. Voices have more weight in the lower registers, so they don't sound as thin. So, Sony's got the better stereo soundstage and the Nakamichi center channel is better. If you're concerned about raw volume and power, the Nakamichi has the Sony beat in this regard. The Nakamichi is capable of reaching far louder volumes to fill a big room with extra headroom and less compression at max output. It's a soundbar for people without neighbors nearby to make complaints, and one of the loudest units we've tested. Our first Sony unit broke when we pushed it to max output for testing, and our replacement Sony compresses more than the Nakamichi. You can still coax a good amount of volume from the Sony, but honestly, if you're liable to break your soundbar just by setting it to max volume, that's not a good sign. The Nakamichi also wins when it comes to surround sound tuning, though it is a close call between the two. We tested its surround Atmos and center performance using the Movie 1 preset in native mode. The Shockwave has a slightly more balanced surround sound with punchy bass, a flat mid-range, and a mostly neutral treble. Both soundbars have a relatively weak high bass, so the boominess is slightly de-emphasized, which can also help cut out bloat with some media. The Nakamichi surround tuning tilts to favor the deep bass, and the treble range is a little more present compared to the Sony, which can help bring out metallic sound effects. The Nakamichi's additional drivers also mean that 7.1 surround sound content will properly play from the satellites as separate channels. When it comes to 3D audio formats like Dolby Atmos, these two bars are neck and neck. With the Sony, all four speakers house up-firing drivers, so the sound bounces off the ceiling all around you. Rumbly lows come from below, while higher frequency sounds are easy to track with a good sense of their elevation. The Nakamichi's tuning is also rumbly with Atmos media, though loud sounds like explosions are toned down enough for you to enjoy dialogue and effects like swords crossing in busy combat scenes. Height effects like swooping drones are vivid and well-tracked, adding to your sense of immersion. The Nakamichi still lends you some adjustable height options called adaptive height dispersion. We left this one off for the measurements because according to the manufacturer, this allows for the audio playback as intended by the director. But these various settings on the Nakamichi each offer a different interpretation of 3D audio, which is worthwhile for some people, especially if you want an exaggerated sound field that uses more of the surround channels. This can also make an action flick more impactful, but with other content, it seems artificial. Which leads us to sound enhancements. Let's quickly address what they have in common, which includes night mode, level adjustments for the different speaker channels, bass adjustments, and virtual surround. So you have some bandwidth for adjusting the balance of your various speaker channels to fit your space. As for differences, the Sony has automatic room correction while the Nakamichi doesn't. But you can invest the time to manually calibrate the Nakamichi soundbar. It includes 3 room correction presets based on the room size and a custom option where you add your space's dimensions. Advanced settings like crossover frequency and per channel output levels are also available and can certainly make a difference. You can change between different listening modes like stereo and all-channel audio too. The Sony has a voice mode, so dialogue cuts through busy or poorly mixed audio. Besides the bass slider, EQ is absent, while the Nakamichi uses EQ presets to handle this instead. However, changing the EQ presets involves slightly more forethought than simply activating a voice mode. For the tinkerer, the Nakamichi offers more flexibility to make changes, but if you prefer to set and forget, the Sony is more straightforward. So which soundbar should you buy? While these are both premium soundbars, they're meant for different lifestyles and viewing habits. For most people, the Sony makes more sense, given that it fits more easily in households and offers an immersive and pleasing sound. But the caveat is that we're essentially comparing a sumo wrestler with a middleweight boxer, or Blanca squaring off with Cammy in Street Fighter. Even though they're both good, they're quite different. The Nakamichi Shockwafe wireless is massive in size compared to the Sony BRAVIA Theater Quad. If you want a kit to fill a big room with sound, or you need more volume on tap than you need, then the Nakamichi is a clear winner. It's a bassy setup with more manual calibration parameters to nerd out on. The extra HDMI in and optical ports simultaneously connect to more devices with lower audio latency than the Sony 2. Thanks to the Nakamichi's extra channels, 7.1 surround sound plays back correctly without downmixing. That said, without features like automatic room correction as found on the Sony, this setup might leave beginners and audio novices overwhelmed. The Sony offers an argument for the virtues of ease and simplicity. The elegant 4.14 setup fits in more spaces, particularly if your home decor is minimalist and you live in an apartment, or if you like your neighbors. Despite its smaller size and lone subwoofer, the tuning delivers a solid amount of bass, and the upshot of individual speakers is the ability to create a very wide stereo soundstage. Plus, the whole kit is compatible with more wireless connections. It's a set it and forget it design, which might disappoint some people who want more control. The Sony compromises in some areas. For a lot of people, the simplicity of automatic room correction is a boon, but it limits adjustability. Even though eARC and HDMI in are completely sufficient for most folks, fewer ports might put off gamers with more than one next-gen console, or if you still have an old DVD player with an optical port. And while dialogue sounds clear via the Phantom Center channel, it doesn't have the same balance as the Nakamichi's discrete center channel tuning. In the end, each home theater is selling you a vision on how to spend your leisure time and your cash. However, their executions are very different, so choose the one that fits your home. The good news is that both sound great, so you can't go wrong. That's all for today's matchup. If you're interested in learning more about these soundbars, check out our full written reviews linked in the description box below. Until next time, I'm Vanessa from RTINGS.com, where we help you find the best soundbar for your needs. Bye!